I'm going to read a little poetry for you. So His Dark Materials comes from a passage from John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is, and hope I don't mess this up, into this wild abyss, the womb of nature, and perhaps her grave, of neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all these in their pregnant these in their pregnant causes mist confusedly, and which must. Nope, we're gonna scrap that. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead. Fortunately, I know where to cut that because that was bad.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ritual Chamber. We are the two guys from nowhere. I am Josh Scoresby and this is Jeff Balakwa. And today we are going to be giving our take on a show that you are really excited to cover, which is His Dark Materials.
Correct.
So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So this synopsis is weird because we plan to do a kind of an end of a series thing, which is hard because the series is so in depth that now we kind of have to delve into all of it. So we're going to try and do it real quick and as concise as possible. So the synopsis, it's going to be a bit hard, and I'm going to have to go a little bit deeper. So if this is long, I'm sorry. Fast forward, whatever. But His Dark Materials is a dark fantasy series written by Philiip Pullman from 1995 to 2000 as the books The Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. The Northern Lights was later adapted to the film The Golden Compass in 2007, and later adapted in full in the HBO Max series His Dark Materials beginning in 2019. The series, here's the actual synopsis. The series follows a young orphan named Lyra who lives in a world where a person's soul manifests as an animal companion called a demon. Her world is governed by the Magisterium, a theocratic political party which has seized full control over every aspect of society. After a series of kidnappings, finds Lyra's best friend taken, and links to a strange substance called dust. She, along with her demon Pan, embark on a multi-world journey where they learn that Lyra, along with a young boy named Will, are prophesied to change the fate of not only their respective worlds, but the end of death itself and the freeing of free will. That was 9 kinds of a mouthful. I understand that.
Yes.
But we can't go into the show without
I agree.
a lot of kind of context and depth to what this show is and why I was excited to do it and why I kind of forced Josh into doing it.
You don't say. No, but that being said, I mean, honestly,
I damn near glued his eyes open like a straight up Clockwork Orange.
Yes.
Made him watch it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how the first season of this felt for me. Yeah. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I actually really did enjoy this show, which is why I think I was actually pretty excited to do this. Yeah. Because I think there is a lot of value in this show that I think that we can, get into.
Yeah,
and so it will be something fun to do this episode on. So
the reason we're talking about this show specifically and why I really wanted to is because I feel like it's one of the best shows on TV right now that no one has talked about at all. At least, newer shows, especially with streaming and stuff. Again, we still want to do an episode on streaming, but there's always what's trending. And I feel like a lot of newer shows kind of go on a safe formula of supernatural, kids, which this one has, but then something fun that can trend on TikTok. Hello, Wednesday. And this show doesn't really have that. This show is really delving into deep concepts and deep theories and things that ruminate over and things to really really think about, which is kind of why the books never really got their due, because they are technically a YA novel or a YA series, technically. Mm-hmm. But Philiip Pullman actually wrote them as kids' books, just as the way as the Narnia books were written. In fact, they're kind of an inverse of the Narnia series. And so they never really found their audience. Then, they came out with the 2007 movie, The Golden Compass, which they thought they could market to kids. But the subject matter is very heavy. It's adult.
It is.
It is a young adult film, but or a young adult story, obviously. Mm-hmm. But adults can relate to it.
Well,
and it could be told to kids too, as a kind of a dangers of these types of things. I mean, we teach kids theology,
yeah.
religion, and stuff. This is sort of the antithesis of that, like kind of how you can teach kids. I'm going a little bit too deep already.
I think what happens is what it really does is it focuses on the struggles of society in its totality. Right. That's really what it does. Like,
and totalitarian governments and stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah. Any abuse of power, control, manifestation, manipulation of fear, and things like that. That's really in any form. That's really what this touches on, and that's.
So that was something that was interesting when you mentioned that to me. It feels very YA. I'm like, well, it is.
Because it does.
And
you know,
it is. And it does.
It is and it isn't.
Yeah.
So
so many YA novels or YA book series or YA stuff that is kind of put out there always kind of has the same, that, like I said, like that same kind of formula. There's always like young kids in love, and then like.
By the way, YA, for anybody that doesn't know, means young adult, if you don't know that.
And like always some sort of apocalyptic situation. And then there's some sort of trial. This one, it's interesting because it's more youth fantasy. It's more like young fantasy. It's a dark fantasy, but it's more geared towards youth, at least in their early books. In the first 2 books, and even in the show, the first series, it's about kids. I mean, it's about a little girl trying to find her best friend.
Yeah. Very touching too.
And her relationship with her demon, and then there's familial stuff that kind of comes into it too. So I'm going to try to read a little poetry where the title of this book title of this series comes from. Comes from John Milton's Paradise Lost. And I'm going to only read a slight passage of it because otherwise I can't do it. Unless the Almighty Maker then ordained his dark materials to create more worlds into this wild abyss, the wary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked wide. Read a little longer than I meant to, but I couldn't stop myself.
So yeah, I don't know. You know, obviously because this is a show that you wanted to cover. You know, I kind of want you to like get the introduction to this. You know, kind of where we want to go with this.
Yeah, of course. So
take the
reason I wanted to cover this, again, I said this series has not really been talked about. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos on different stuff, and series that even we watch just kind of, hell, I get it for research for our own videos. But I haven't seen much content on this series, and I've loved it. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderfully acted. Daphne Keane from Logan is amazing as Lyra. You know, he's not in it much, but James McAvoy as Lord Asriel. The themes are fantastic. And I am not an atheist, but I am an anti-theist. I do not believe in organized religion. I believe it's great to have an idea, to quote Chris Rock from Dogma. It's great to have an idea. Ideas are easy to change. Beliefs are harder. People die for it. People kill for it. And this series and this series of books kind of really shows a light to that.
Yeah,
with having a totalitarian government that literally is out to kill a child, and they do kill children.
Yeah. And that was one thing that I thought was interesting about this, because although I'm also not a fan of organized religion as well, I feel that, and I'm just being devil's advocate right here, that religion is always the easiest organization to villainize. But
it'd be ironic if you said demonize.
Well, yeah. But you know, realistically, when it comes to any organized form of anything that tries to control with fear, manipulation, you know, those things happen in society in general.
Of course.
And I don't think they're ever justified. But again, I think with organized religion, and I'm not like an advocate for it, but there are positive aspects that come out of them.
Oh no, absolutely.
You know, but again, just it is the easiest one to really paint a picture of. And in that being said, they did really depict the fanaticism that religion and people in religion tend to where they tend to go, what they're willing to do for their religion in this series. I thought it was done very well.
Well, and it's funny, even prominent Christian or Judeo-Christian authors and writers and speakers have actually said that these books are not an attack on Christianity specifically.
Yeah.
But it's just the dangers and the constraints of dogma and using one's own personal beliefs as a means to control or oppress. I can't remember his name right now, but there was a prominent one that really stuck out to me that mentioned that. But so even going to the Golden Compass, when that was made, it was supposed to be a trilogy of films. Obviously, making the Golden Compass was supposed to be the Northern Lights, which has since been adapted or renamed in at least the West as the called not the West because technically England's the West. There's a British writer, so. But it's in subsequent releases have been recalled the Golden Compass, but originally was called the Northern Lights. But it was supposed to be the Golden Compass, Subtle Knife, Amber Spyglass, and then the studio was so inundated and so afraid of religious groups protesting because they protested hard because this was and kind of is the anti-Narnia.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it is.
And in my opinion, I think it's kind of bullshit that a religious group can protest a movie that is an anti-Narnia that kind of can be geared towards kids, but like kind of be anti-theistic, while they can keep pumping out Narnia movies.
That just goes to show like what realistically like the ideology of this show is about is trying to break those societal norms.
True.
And the exploration of that and what you have to go through to be able to break those norms to allow those things to take place. And this is done very well with some characters in this, which we'll get into later. Yeah. But sometimes with that, you also become that.
Yeah. You either die the hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, that's totally true. I mean, even in certain, I didn't write any names of the magisteriums down because it's kind of hard to really tell because they kind of come out so fast.
Well, but,
but even a lot of them, they're kind of on the good side, or they think they are, until they become very villainous.
So with that being said, obviously the magisteriums, and then there's the temple, and there's a lot of jumping between worlds in this at some point where the series gets really complex.
And that's where I got confused with the magisterium. It's like you don't know who is the bad guy at certain points, and it just kind of, this guy's the bad guy, and that guy's the bad guy, and then this guy's the bad guy. But the ultimate bad guy is
antagonist is the authority. So
there is a lot of jumping around in worlds, and even in the books, because I did read the books years ago. And it's even confusing in the books. There's not really much, I don't say exposition, but like heads up, like, hey, we're in a different world now. And with the show too. I mean, I felt that way sometimes. Even the second season, you go into Cittàgazze. You pronounce it correctly. Cittàgazze.
Yeah.
And
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. And you're kind of like, where the hell are we?
Yeah.
And you have the wraiths or whatever that can just sort of eat someone's
specters.
The specters, and they can just sort of eat your soul, just by surrounding you, and that's a cool concept. One weird thing is Miss Coulter can like
control them at
some
point.
Reason. That's never really explained.
There's
a lot of stuff.
The power of feminism.
Well, I mean, kind of akin to theology in general. There's a lot of stuff that's just sort of like, but they can do that. Like, There's you don't need to explain it much more. So let's get into the characters. I mean, some of the ones that stand out are the main focus and the better ones, obviously, of the series. Obviously, we got to talk about Lyra Belacqua, played by Daphne Keane. She was in Logan, as I mentioned previously.
X-23.
Yes, X-23. In the film, she was played by Dakota Richards, and it's funny because and I'm only speaking comparatively to the books, and I will do that kind of through this as we talk about characters, because there is a dissonance between, anyone will say the book is better. I'm not saying the book is better, but there's a dissonance between certain times when a film is made or a TV show is made off a book or a video game or whatever kind of like other medium, where it's going to be compared. Daphne Keane is like perfect Lyra in my book, in my mind. That's she looks like an orphan. I mean, you kind of get that same scrappiness that you got from Logan.
Yeah,
and maybe that's kind of like informed my opinion. Is like
Yeah.
she's a little scrappy little girl. Whereas in the movie, the Golden Compass film, where Dakota Richards played her, she was a little bit too prissy. She was a little bit too English.
More
is what I'm gonna
polished.
say. Yeah, more polished.
Okay.
But that, but the way she speaks to Miss Coulter, Azrael, and everyone really
Yeah, she's
kind of earns that nickname, Silver
Tongue. Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's arrogance more than it's ignorance. From
The ignorance of a child.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Like it's not having these boundaries set in place that you shouldn't break. It's that those were never set in place,
Yeah.
so you're just speaking
Well, I
from
mean,
your heart.
given her backstory of being an orphan,
Exactly.
left by her
Yeah.
literal father, who she thinks is her
Uncle, yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of themes in here. There's a lot of stuff
she's
going
a
on.
little rebel.
She's a Spitfire, dude. She's a Spitfire. She's a scrapper. She's, yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, I think Daphne Keane was, like, perfect casting for this. Let's talk about her demon, Pantaleon.
Yeah.
Just for a second, because I think it's the most adorable thing. I love the idea of, like, your soul is a...
I do too, and I love...
Apparently using the term spirit animal is insensitive now, but...
Yeah, familiar.
Familiar.
But I love that concept too
Yeah.
about this. I thought that was very fascinating. When I first started watching this show, because obviously I'd had no introduction into it, I was very confused.
As me going, Josh, watch it. Josh, watch it.
I was very
Josh,
confused
Josh,
as
we
to,
watch
like,
the show?
why does she have this ferret that can talk to her, and like what's going on?
And why
here?
is that ferret turning into a bird every now and then?
Yeah, but Pan was my favorite character in this show.
Yeah, I love Pan.
He's in my like thought, he's the most genuine character.
Well, of course.
Like, and
he's the soul of a child, so he represents the innocence
and
of
that's
a
what I'm
child.
saying.
Yeah.
Like, as Lyra continues to grow, he's still like the child of Lyra.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite scenes in this whole series was when they get to the land of the dead, and Lyra has to leave Pan, and their dialogue at that moment.
It's
and
heartbreaking.
It was so touching. Like, honestly, I like started tearing up, and when the boat's leaving the dock,
And she lets out that scream.
and he's letting out the howl. Oh my god,
Yeah.
it was great, and I just love Pan. I'm happy that they were able to reconnect, because I really did think when I got to that episode that was going to be the last that we were going to see of them, and that would have been heartbreaking because the bond that they built together throughout the show and that they showed that was so strong.
Yeah.
And
And
so
it's set-
shout out to Pan.
Yeah,
I
and to
love
set a
this character.
little bit of context, Lyra and Will, who we will touch on next, they have to go to the land of the dead, but you obviously cannot take your soul to the land of the dead. And these animal familiars are a person's soul, and they make a point that every person has a demon and a death that follows them throughout their lives. You can see your demon, or at least certain people can see your demon in certain worlds. That's your soul, but you cannot see your death. But your death is always your friend who's been following you throughout your life. You can't see your death until you've accepted death. Blah 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 blah. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautifully
complicated,
done.
but
It's
beautiful.
complicated but beautiful. But so obviously her soul cannot follow her into the realm of the dead, and he has to be left behind. And it's just it's such a heartbreaking goodbye.
It's really like, I'm gonna be honest, when I got to that scene, it was like one of the most powerful scenes I've seen in television in like a long time.
Yeah.
Like, it was very
I remembered it from the books,
done, and it was very, very touching.
And I remembered it from the book, and I was waiting for that scene to see if it hit as hard, because when I read the book, like, that scene hit me hard, and it was great.
Yeah.
So like I decided, let's get into Will Perry, played by Amir Wilson. Fun fact: he was played by Dominic Cooper on stage in the theatrical retelling of this.
Okay.
Dominic Cooper from Preacher, fucking Howard Stark.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Young Howard Stark.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
I didn't know that until today.
I liked Will. His character, he's always trying to do the right thing, and you know, in this series, even as he's given this direction, when he finally meets his dad tells him this direction of what he must do. Although he's still going to go down that path, he makes the decision to do what he thinks is right first. And, you know, one touching scene I think in this that was really important was when Yorick tells him that he is a warrior.
Yeah.
And that when he doesn't think that he is, and Yorick tells him, like, no, you are. You're much more than you think you are. And this,
well, not to mention, Will,
there's some good scenes.
Yeah,
in this
and
shit,
not
man.
to mention, Will plays
Like-
the same trick that Lyra kind of did earlier in the show.
Yeah.
To him, like kind of just tricking him with words instead of, can't remember exactly what happened.
I think it's when he cuts his helmet, right?
Yeah, it's when he cuts his helmet. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what Lyra did. Lyra tricked the other Panzerborn, whose name escapes me. Panzerborn is a armored bear. Armored polar bear.
Well, tricks him into fighting him one-on-one in combat versus
so he
having
can have a demon.
Yeah, exactly.
Because animals who
they essentially want to be
so
human.
Weird. Yeah, it's so weird because
they want to have demons.
You kind of like animals are just demons in this in this world, but then there are still animals, and some of those animals want their own demons because those animals are also intelligent. It's kind of weird. And again, it's dark fantasy, and so you don't have to, you just go with it.
And just touching on that, I mean, like, again, one of my favorite characters in this, Yorick Bjornsson, but I'm just gonna throw this out there with like, what the fuck with the armored bears? Like, realistically, like, when you watch this and they bring it in and they give you this whole context
on it,
you just
go with it.
And you're just
because
like,
you want to see bears fighting.
I don't understand the significance of this, but Yorick Bjornsson is one of the best characters in the show, and he's an armored bear, and you just got to accept it. You just got to deal with it.
Voiced by Ian McKellen in the film.
Yeah.
By the way, just throwing that out there. I can't remember who voiced him. Who voiced him in the fucking show? And I had it written down and I lost it. Oh God, it was Joe Tamberg. I don't know who that is. Sorry, voice actor, but it was Ian McKellen in the movie.
Yeah. So the two that I think are the most prevalent to really touch on in this, to be honest,
and we can do it together,
are really Marissa Coulter and Azrael.
Lord Azrael.
So
Lord Azrael.
Call him
by his name.
Call
me by my name.
He's a
fucking
total
asshole.
D-bag. Yeah, I mean, like, he kills Lyra's best friend, which really kind of he's like the Jaime Lannister of this series.
Yeah.
Kind of sets up this whole thing, because if you think about where we get to the end, it's Lyra literally trying to find Roger to help him.
Well, and so is
because he was doing something selfish.
But so is Marissa Coulter.
Same thing. True. They're both very similar characters, and
And real quick, before we get too far into this, they're Lyra's parents.
Yes, they are Lyra's parents.
You don't know that. You don't know that until like the middle of season 2.
Yeah. And you know, there's sometimes
they're both trying to kill their daughter.
Yes, and there's sometimes in movies or television where somebody has a turnaround and you feel like their characters made a change, and good for them. I felt that they both met their fate, and it was way too late. They should have met it way long ago.
Well, I'll give them this. They are redeemed. I think they're redeemed a lot.
I just disagree. So here's my thing, and this is my thing. We had a sidebar conversation about this. Azrael's mission is justified. I get it.
Correct.
I understand that. But doing the right thing should never come at the cost of anybody that you're trying to do the right thing for.
Correct.
And that's where I completely disagree with him.
There's a lot of this where he is very much, he doesn't care who he cares.
He's visceral in the fact of getting to his mission, and that sacrifice should not lead you to making decisions to do better for everybody else. And that's where I disagree with him.
No,
and that's
100%. And I agree with the one thing is that, like,
this show wants you to root for him, but I
I disagree. I think the show wants you to hate him.
I felt like they
until those final moments.
Okay, so
and it takes him a minute, and even in the first season, you know, at this point you don't know that Lord Asriel is her father.
Yeah.
There's glimpses that they give you, and it kind of clues that he is. But when he shows up, when she shows up with Roger, and he's like, no, not her.
Yeah.
That's when you kind of go, oh, like, and then he's like relieved to see the boy.
Yeah.
And he literally murders a child.
And it's terrible. It's really sad.
I'll give it this.
Sad
it's a weird thing because obviously, you know, comparing things from book to movie or to television, and the way they change little things. So in the film, the book does end with the boy dying. The film, they cut it out because they obviously wanted to gear it towards children, and they figured if we get a second movie, it will just throw that in the beginning.
Okay.
To make the first movie more child friendly, like they're going off on this adventure. Rewatch The Golden Compass, and that's how it ends. They're going off on this adventure, and the second movie would have started with literally Roger's death.
Oh.
And in the books, his death is played a little bit more softly than it is in the movie, or in the show. The show, it's a lot more. I mean, he's not brutally murdered.
Yeah, he's not. He's just torn away from his demon.
Demon, and in the book,
to create a
it's
rift.
Softer in just that he falls away from his demon. As Asriel goes on, he's not in the second season at all.
Yeah.
Until the very end. But once you get into the third season, where he is really building his new Republic of Heaven and building an army, but he also does not care. He's singularly like, this is my mission.
Yeah.
I'm completing my mission. I've been put on this earth for one purpose and one purpose only, until he realizes the prophecy about Lyra is true. And the prophecy about Lyra and Will, that they're basically Adam and Eve. They're the new Adam and Eve. They're going to
allow free will.
They're going to allow free will and reintroduce knowledge as a free thinking thing, which is kind of goes against the idea of Adam and Eve in Genesis and the Bible and other. So the idea is that in the book of Genesis, Eve takes the apple from the serpent from the tree of knowledge. Thus, the idea is that like humans shouldn't have knowledge. That's at least my interpretation. That's the way I get it. We're damned for taking knowledge or wanting knowledge. Azrael's whole mission is to get rid of that idea. Like we should have knowledge. We should be innovative. We should be creative. We should be doing this.
It's fighting against the control of people that are trying to limit them to see outside of what they want them to see. And again, the idea is just, the execution is poor.
Well, obviously. I mean,
the execution is poor. He's a dick.
We both agree he's a complete douchebag.
I can't get over how much I disliked him in the show.
Let's get off Azrael before we get to their mutual end. But Miss Coulter, I mean, same thing. She's a complete absent mother. They both kind of disown Lyra.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in the show, it was an affair, and Lord Asriel killed
her husband. And they had an out of wedlock child.
Yeah, out of wedlock child.
And obviously, they have a
theocratic society.
Yes, exactly. So look at all these things.
Yeah. You know how real life goes, right?
Yeah.
But you know, in the film, she's played by Nicole Kidman. In my mind, Nicole Kidman is more of a Miss Coulter.
Really?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen the film, so I wouldn't.
Okay. So in the
books,
books, Miss Coulter is much more glamorous. Nothing against Ruth Wilson, who plays her in the show. Nothing against her at all. But Nicole Kidman is glamour personified, in a lot of ways. But I think Ruth Wilson, obviously, she got more of a chance to show her character, whereas, you know, Nicole Kidman just got shown being a dick in one movie. As the series goes on and shows that motherhood and kind of regains that sense of motherhood and protection of Lyra, that's where I feel like her and Azrael kind of redeem themselves.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
They kind of both come back into being parents.
But also, again, at the expense, and this is where, again, like I have a problem with these characters because her redeeming quality of motherhood is at the expense of Lyra's free will. Yeah. It's putting her in a place where she can.
I mean, she literally drugs her to go to sleep.
Yeah, and so
Well, she's afraid of the prophecy. She's afraid,
and which is understandable. But again, it's that idea of control and what you're going. You're becoming the antithesis of what you are trying to fight for.
Well,
that's
in
where
a weird way,
I have an issue with these
in
characters.
a weird way, it's kind of almost like how religion and theocracy does treat children.
Absolutely,
put
100%.
Put them to sleep so they're safe. Mm-hmm. You put them to sleep with these safe stories and these platitudes that make them feel safe, instead of letting them be their own person
and letting them
and
explore
let them make their own
and
choices.
make their own choices. Yeah, you're. It's control, and
exactly
they're becoming the thing that they're fighting against, and that's it. And this show has a lot of unique elements and undertones that I think are very fascinating to really explore. And
this makes the show so fucking brilliant, which is why no one's talking about it.
It really is done very well, and that's why I was surprised. Because there are some recommendations that you've made to me that I've been like, I'm not into this, but this was one of the shows that I watched the first episode and I was like, oh damn,
okay,
I can get into this, and I really enjoyed it. So I am glad that we're taking this time to talk about it and sharing this space.
Anyways, real quick before they get their comeuppance.
Yes.
Well, they as we both talked about them being shitty parents and having bad motivations throughout the entire series, they do redeem themselves by taking on Metatron, who is the regent of the authority, who is trying to basically destroy everything, kill everyone, and make take control of everything. Really, every reality, every subjugate every single reality. And it's funny. He was played by the guy who played Translucent in The Boys.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know that.
I didn't realize that either. I knew I recognized him from somewhere, and I just couldn't place it. Like, it was funny. I was watching that episode because he only shows up in one episode. He's sort of a looming threat in the latter half of the last season, and he was kind of like, where do I know that guy from? Because Alex Hassel, he was also in Violent Night. He's like the main human person. Cassandra is obviously the main person.
Yeah.
But
shout out to The Boys too.
Yeah.
We went to LA Comic-Con and we got to see a panel of them. That was really fun. So
I did not.
But I think
so they get their comeuppance by battling Metatron and taking him down, and they kind of just, for Lyra, like, just grab him and throw him into a pit. And the idea is they throw him into a pit that, like, you are going to fall forever. Mm-hmm. Like, they're never going to die. They're just going to fall.
Oh,
it's weird. It's
sounds
weird.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's weird the way that they word it in the books that, like, it's an endless pit.
It's a Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, they're just going to fall forever. And, like, no one's gonna die. They're just gonna fall forever.
Oof.
In the show, it's a lot better said. It's like it's a pit that they're going to die, but they're going to be erased from existence. Like, they won't join the universe. Like, their spirits or whatever won't rejoin. Like, just like when they free the dead from the land of the dead, they're not gonna rejoin.
They're not gonna rejoin. Okay. So I think
awesome scene.
One thing that I do want to talk about this before we get into our monkeys, unless there's something else that you want to touch on. What I really did like about this show was the world building and the set design. I'm assuming there was a lot of CGI here, as there is in a lot of shows now. But Cittàgazze was beautiful. The location that they put it in. I mean, it's this little city at the edge of the bay, or I don't know. I'm assuming a bay or like the ocean, sea, somewhere. Was just done. It just looked fantastic, and I loved the had this very old world feel. And I don't know. I really liked that. But the one that I really enjoyed more than anything was the Land of the Dead.
Really?
It reminded me a lot of Beetlejuice. you know,
sandworms. You know I hate them.
There's this mundane aspect of like you're going in, take your punch card. Like it had that
the bureaucratic
stylization of it. Was very bureaucratic, and it reminded me of that. And I really enjoyed that. Like sit in this waiting room, and then they had this kind of this idea of like, I don't want to call it like an intervention, but it was like an intervention of these. They get sat in this waiting room and they're, not to mention, hi, I'm Lyra, I'm waiting to die, and like,
even when they get to the land of the dead, you're totally right. Like the world building of like. Even like in Lyra's universe, it's almost a steampunky type of universe. Like
exactly.
They have aeronauts and
aeronauts and they're traveling by zeppelins, and I loved that. I just loved the world.
Or they even have the wind up flies that steal souls. Or whatever. No, definitely. And then in the land of the dead, it's like this cool like dusty desert, but also like with piles of what look like personal belongings to people. And then governed by these harpies who just want to hear stories. But the longer you're there, you forget your own life because it's sort of a purgatory. This isn't the real land of the dead. This isn't heaven. This isn't hell. It's just a sort of weird purgatory, which it again kind of expounds on like Lazriel's whole argument. It's like if you die, you don't go to heaven. The heaven and hell, it's a lie. You just get sent to a purgatory where you're just again going through this bureaucratic system. You could wait in line forever.
And I think it's funny because the way that they, like you said, there's the steampunk aspect, and then you get to Cittàgazze. It's very old world, like
an old Italian, Tuscan city.
And then you get to the land of the dead, and it's almost like it's a mockery of like modern day society. But it's done so well because it still carries these old aspects of society. It's the melding between the two, and I just think that I don't know. I just think I really enjoyed watching that. I was like, oh, this is fascinating, and the world building, like I said, and it's just done very well. I really enjoyed that.
I know. And speaking of world building too, and we got to talk about Dr. Mary Malone, even though it's weird. She's a kind of an important character in the show, but like also not. Like she's just sort of there in the background, like kind of like doing her own thing. Like I'm just doing my own thing.
It's
like just a weird joke about like your mom's like single 40, 50-year-old friend. Like, what am I doing? Am I a lesbian or am I just a single widow? Sorry, it was a joke from an SNL bit. We'll cut that out. It's fine.
No, that's fine. You put it there.
But her going off she goes to Cittàgazze as well. Meets up with the girl from Game of Thrones, and she will be in The Last of Us.
I
cannot remember her name. I'm sorry. I that just now rang in my brain. But her being a serpent and kind of figuring out where to go. And just finding all these cracks between worlds, and it, again, kind of confusing, like the world jumping. Where they are, what's going on. Mary's kind of like the worst culprit of that, because she's just sort of jumping between worlds. And then ends up
she's a fucking pioneer for sure.
She is, dude. I mean, dress like one as well. Ends up on a planet or a world with the Mulefa. Was that what it was?
Something like that.
Alien. Elephant creatures who ride around on
All I'm going to say is that they probably spoke Huttese. That's what it sounded like to me. Woompa, jumpa, loompa, dompa. I was like, okay. I've seen this before.
All right. Rough. But and we haven't really touched on the ending of the show, but the ending of the show is very pretty. So, is there any other characters you want to really talk about?
I think we can jump
talk about Lee Scoresby real quick.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Let's give a little shout out to Lee Scoresby.
Let's do it.
I'm going to throw this out there. Lin-Manuel Miranda.
That's a hard 3 words to say.
I know, right? Especially after having a drink or two. But he is not my favorite for whatever reason.
He is mine.
He is so talented, and I have so much respect for him. But when his character was introduced, and I told you this, I was I sent you a text, and I was like, I was like, I couldn't put my finger on why I didn't fucking like this guy. And then I was like, oh, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I was like, that's why I didn't like him. But I will say this. Towards the end of his run on the show, I actually really started to like his character. I felt like he really started to embrace the role differently than how he was introduced. Yeah. And it was really touching to see his character pass. And
he comes back.
Yeah, he does come back. But
we find him in Land Dead, obviously.
But I actually, it was like one of those times where I was like, damn, like I was wrong in my initial feelings about him. And
he couldn't exactly.
I think he deserves a shout out for sure.
As talented as Lin-Manuel is, he could not keep up that Texan accent. But I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. I love Hamilton. I love In the Heights. I love him. He could not keep up that Texan accent in the film. It is done by
Sam Elliott.
Sorry, there's someone outside the window trying to distract me, so I'm just gonna try to.
But I mean, if it's Sam Elliott, I mean, like, who can do a better Texan accent?
Yeah, the stranger from freaking Big Lebowski, and or what else we say he was in?
He was in Tombstone. He was in
tons of movies. I'm not gonna try.
He was in that show with Ashton Kutcher recently. Can't remember what it's called.
I don't know,
but I'll put it down there.
But great, but I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. Again, this is a hard 3 words to say together. But his death scene, like, was one of the most touching. Yeah. It was almost like akin to the Pan scene with going to Land of the
really
Dead.
Was.
It was so touching. Him just, asking his demon not to go before him, and
and Hester was a great demon too. Yeah. Like, shout out to
and him coming actress. Back in Land of the Dead was also beautifully done, and I love him, and I love this fucking show. Can we just get in our fucking monkeys yet?
Yes, let's get into the monkeys.
Real quick. But so the end of the show. Sorry, it ends with a lot of YA novels. It's always about a love story. The beautiful thing about this, it's not focused on a love story. They fall in love at the end, but it's kid love.
Yeah,
there's also that trauma bond.
Now that the sun is gone.
Well, that's like trauma bond, like what they say in Speed. 99% of relationships.
How do you pronounce this thing?
Asa Hetra.
I saw Atrus had the sticker on a Cadillac.
Wow, really going with that one?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, the ending's beautiful and it's great. It's a little bit overdone by both of them. They do have that exact same kind of like that early 2000s emo song vibe. Of like they even say there's a line like where they say like, well, even when we die and maybe we can become one or we'll find each other. Like, all right, it's a little bit dramatic, bro.
So I mean, let's get into the monkeys then. So. I think I'll go first.
That was hilarious, by the way.
I can't even.
All of that. Right. That was hilarious.
Anyway, you know what? I'm gonna give this show a 10 out of 12.
Ooh.
This was a very
good surprise.
Good surprise. It really was. It was like, when you get that Christmas present and you're like shaking it around and you think you know what it is.
I don't shake my Christmas presents, no. But
okay. Well, I generally do unless it meows or barks. Then I stop. But
what are you, Lisa Turtle from Saved by the Bell?
But this was one of those shows that I think my expectations and it's no offense to you, we just don't always agree on certain things.
Well, again, no one's been talking about this show.
My expectations weren't very high for it, but as I started to watch it, I really started to like the characters. There was a lot of strong character development here.
Well, as you told me, you watched the first episode and you were like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah. And again, one of my favorite things was the world building. I do, although I don't like this concept of always trying to villainize religion, when I do think that there's other things that you can also villainize, I think that this was done well because it really, the way that they explore extremists was done very well.
And I think that's the main point.
And that's the main point. Yeah. And that was done very well. So there was a lot of really touching moments in this show where they really created some beautiful bonds between characters that worked really well. So for me, this is a 10 out of 12. This was a fantastic show, and I really enjoyed it. And if people haven't been talking about this or people haven't been watching it, go watch it. Honestly, this was great. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, and it's nice and short. Like it's not.
It's lengthy. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to binge it all.
Comparatively,
it's
nice and short.
But it's lengthy. But do take the time because this is a very enjoyable show.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 11 out of 12. Obviously, you know where I stand. I love it. I've been trying to get everyone in my life to watch this show. I forced him to watch it. Literally, I bugged him to do it. I've been bugging a bunch of people to watch this show. It's fantastic. The only down I would give it is that sometimes the pacing, and this is true for the novels as well, so whatever, it just is what it is. Sometimes the pacing, like you said, the jumping from worlds, you kind of don't know where people are. Even the idea of Azrael's Republic of Heaven, you don't know where that is. Is that in his world? Is that in another world? Did he create another world? He may have. He has a fucking bomb, and like he has used dust to make a weapon. Yeah. Maybe he could have made a world. The way they handled the angels and the different factions of angels, and even the way they handled the authority and where, like, how their backstory and where he came from, and the idea of Metatron, which I just real quick touch on. Yeah, they make a point to say Metatron was a man named Enoch who then became an angel, which is really fucking fascinating biblical, like, nerd knowledge. The Book of Enoch is like a very popular but yet non-canonical biblical text. That's just really interesting.
Well,
I used to be a big theology nerd, and it's been years since I've studied it, so my knowledge is spotty. But that's one of those ones that I picked up on, and I was like, ooh, that's that book that no one wants to ever talk about.
And I think that's, before we get into this,
deals a lot with the Nephilim and stuff.
It is this concept of trying to find your maker, but your maker has a maker, and your maker's maker has a maker. Like, it's interesting to see that
to be your own maker, and
that's
ultimately like Azrael's goal.
Yeah.
So watch this show. Like, again, no one's been talking about it. That's why I really wanted to do an episode on this. We have a little while before we have the next Marvel.
I really want to do Megan. It's been getting great reviews. So.
What came out yesterday?
Yeah.
All right,
so
maybe we'll do Megan
next.
I'm down. But we have another idea before Quantumania finally hits us. And whenever DC figures out what they're doing.
Yeah.
So on that note.
Yeah, with that note, I will agree with you completely. Listen to this man on this one. This man on this one.
I may hate things that everyone likes.
His show.
I may hate a lot of things that everyone likes, but
you got to watch his show. This was a fantastic show. With that being said, everybody, we want to thank you for joining us in the Ritual Chamber. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and vogue. We hope you enjoyed this video and checking out from the Ritual Chamber. Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this video and checking out from the Ritual Chamber. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ritual Chamber. What are we doing? We are the two guys from nowhere.
Yep.
All right.
Get it out.
This is only my third beer. 3.
I was planning to start with only 3 beers, but now I'm like 5 in, so.
Well, that's okay. You have more mass than I do.
Fuck. Oh, you're a bitch.
What do you...
I know. You're tiny.
I weigh 160 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
165. I could have somewhere in between there.
Last time I weighed 160 pounds.
Even
my thinnest, dude, look at my wingspan.
My wingspan is longer than yours. For my height?
If I sat up straight. But I get you with the fingertips.
I know, but you're also... How tall are you?
6 even.
I'm 5'9".
Okay, fair enough.
I got these long arms. I don't know what to do with them. All right.
You do the Wednesday dance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, hold on. I just fucking cracked the shit out of my neck. That probably picked up on camera. That's how much I cracked. Oh, God.
I'm just saying that's a result. I mean...
No, it's from fucking years of headbanging and, like, my neck is just...
So, when he's listening to Evanescence...
You bastard!
Okay. All right.